Another episode of NRG Insights. At the moment, we're going through our lender series, which has been brilliant, by the way, and we are going to carry this on because we've had loads of really good responses from it. As well as speaking to influential people in the mortgage market, specifically lending at the moment, just getting their views on the market and obviously any exciting topics or interesting topics that they think is worth discussing. So today I have Roz Cawood from Streambank, MD of Property Finance at Streambank. So thank you for joining me, Roz.
Hello, nice to be here.
Good. Let's start with, tell me about your financial services journey, how you got to where you are now at Streambank.
Well, it's been a long one, that's for sure. So I started, I've been in the industry, over 30 years now, although I don't like to admit it. It's that long. But started off, decided, was getting a bit fed up of studying and couldn't decide whether I wanted to go to university or not. I got my place at university, got a full grant, which shows how long ago it was that I was applying. But at the same time, I thought, you know what, if I get a job, then I think I might take that route, because in my naivety, I thought that, if I spent 3 years at uni, by the time I came out, if I'd worked for 3 years, I'd be at the same sort of level. So literally, I think about a few days before I had to start uni, I got a job with NatWest, and so the journey in financial services began. So started there, moved into sort of management trainee with the building society. That took me away from Cardiff, where I grew up, and moved me up sort of nearer London. And then the Mortgage Corporation, which some of you may or may not remember, first specialist lender, or first centralised lender was starting. And they were offering all these like wonderful salaries and bright lights of London. And at the time, I couldn't decide, because at the Building Society, I covered obviously mortgages and, advising and savings. And this would be specialising in mortgages. But I took the step and I haven't really looked back. So started underwriting with them and was sort of in the credit side of things. Experienced a couple of downturns in the market. Moved to Capital Home Loans, where I ended up as ops manager at 25. So
I suppose you still want one of the more experienced people in specialists, because it's still new, right? So even at 25, you still have probably a bit more experience than most in that.
Yeah, because it was very different in those days, because packages hadn't really got going then. So it was a very different distribution world. Very different. But then after that, I did try a little bit of broking for a year or so. And then I moved to SPML, which most people remember for sort of being owned by Lehman's. And when I was there initially in the underwriting side, that's when I moved over to the sales side. So something that I said that I would never do because I wasn't a salesperson. Did that. And it's just gone on from there, really. During the credit crunch, I found myself at Legal & General doing something slightly different, which was head of business development, which I thought, great, right up my street. Actually turned out to be business development and training. So it was more of an L&D angle. And I did a lot of project management, et cetera, et cetera. But when Nigel Wilson came along and decided he didn't need the network anymore, there was a restructure, and I found myself redundant. So then I went back into the lending side of things, and that's when I joined Roger at Precise, and that gave me my first sort of foray into bridging, which I've been doing now for over 10 years. So
I always talk about this Precise ones, and we've had the conversation. I think James is coming on in a couple of weeks. I think now I've got all of you from that squad. I think if I've got the sticker out from Precise, I think I've nailed the whole squad. But produced a hell of a team there, right? That's a hell of a team that is now all in either managing director, sales director, whatever it is, head of. Everyone from that team has come through and is now, kind of shining in the whatever business they're in. Do you think?
Absolutely, quite a story, really. Because I think when I joined, they were still relatively unknown, Precise. Obviously, the people who ran it and created it, Alan, etc., were very well known in the industry. But Precise was still a sort of newcomer to the market. And I do remember in those first few months, sort of having to explain who Precise were and what we were all about. And yeah, to produce such a bunch of people is quite phenomenal, really. Says a lot about
why do you think it was?
what
I
happened.
mean, I've asked everyone these questions, but I'm just intrigued why everyone thinks everyone's got a slightly different answer. But why? How did they create that? Do you think that?
Well, I think the people who set up the company and running the company knew what they were doing and what they wanted to deliver. And, maybe it was the caliber of the people they hired. Maybe they got that back. Maybe that comes down to you, Marcus, and, the recruitment skills.
I just can't believe it's just good recruitment. I think creating leaders is probably the hardest thing we have to do in business, right? Because that's the toughest thing, is to create leaders, because if everyone becomes a leader, they move on. But they nailed it there. So I'm always intrigued as to how that.
Yeah, it was a great culture, a great culture, and I think as well, when a little bit similar to where I am at the moment, when you're creating something new, I think the people that you do get on board are all up for it. They're all about making it happen and putting in over and above what needs to be done, and have that sort of same perhaps attitude and mentality of sort of can do. And
has it helped actually? Did it help starting somewhere? Because obviously you're building a culture now at Streambank, and it's all relatively new. You've been in the market a couple of years. Has it helped that you've been through it before and you've seen how cultures are built? Do you think that's sort of held you in good stead for what you're trying to build there?
Yeah, definitely, because I experienced it again with Mast Haven. I wasn't necessarily in it right at the beginning. I think I was employee number 30. So they had been going for a couple of years, but I joined them just before, they were just going through their application for a banking license when I joined them. So that came along in the next, 18, 24 months after I joined. But yeah, you do sort of go through that process. And I think it just, makes you part of something, and that whatever you do has a direct impact on the success of the company, which I find exciting, to be part of something and help build something.
You've got to really want that, haven't you? We've talked about this before about going to like startups or something that isn't fully fledged. You've got to be into the vision, haven't you? You've got to really live and breathe that, because it's not for everyone, startups, but if you love it, it's a great reason to get up in the morning, isn't it, to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds exciting, and it can be, but for some people it's the complete opposite, because you don't quite know what you're going to be doing, how it's going to pan out. You start off with a piece of paper and then you've got to bring it to life, and sometimes you'll think you're going on a journey A to B and you might actually end up A to Z. And if you're somebody that thrives on that, then that's great. But if you don't like change, or you're a little bit resistant to that, or you like to know exactly what you do, what you're doing every day, it can be a bit of a nightmare, because it is a case of having to roll your sleeves up, get on with it, and not necessarily do everything that was in your job description. You just do what needs to be done to sort of make it successessul, really. And a lot of
obviously you haven't enjoyed that, because this is your third or fourth time within that kind of that startup environment. So you clearly thrive, right?
Yeah, no, I love it, and I don't know. I hate the word workaholic and stuff, but I'm not a 9-to-5er. Sometimes I wish I could be, but I think again you have to have that mentality that you do what needs to be done, and and then hopefully reap the rewards.
And you mentioned something earlier.
Worked out for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to touch on, because I think this is really poignant for people that, especially if you come from like a technical background, or maybe underwriting, or haven't gone straight to sales. You said that you didn't want to go into sales because you weren't a salesperson as such, as we call them. But you're obviously very good at what you do, right? You're obviously very good at developing business and that kind of thing. Do you think some people might not completely buy into what a salesperson trait is, because you think it's the that Wolf of Wall Street type nonsense, really, and actually you become a very good salesperson without maybe having those traits of like the pushiness and that kind of thing. Do you think people do fall down that trap of thinking they're not a salesperson without really understanding what it is to be a salesperson?
Definitely. I've spoken to so many people that would class themselves as not a salesperson, but I think it's all about knowledge and education. And I think people with a credit background, certainly, in our industry, can make great salespeople because they understand the deals. So when you're having to explain to brokers or introducers, can you do a deal? Can you not do a deal? You can sort of see how a deal could be structured to make it work, or how it couldn't be. So you see both sides of it. And on the other side of the coin, if a deal can't be done, you can speak to the underwriters and talk it through to make sure that they have got the facts and they're happy with it. And then equally, if you have to explain why a case has been declined, you can do it with some sort of knowledge and explanation that helps the broker understand it. And if it's just something that's outside criteria or couldn't be done, hopefully they've got a good understanding. So the next deal comes in, that it is one that goes straight through.
I do hear that a lot, about the best BDMs coming from credit and underwriting and that kind of thing, just because it's credibleness a word? It's that, being credible is because you understand like you say, you're not selling. You're this kind of more data-driven decisions that you can explain.
Yeah, and absolutely. And when you're sitting in front of brokers or you're asking them for business or whatever, I think they can just see through people that don't have a good knowledge or understanding of the business. Yeah. And they only want you in their office if you're going to add value to their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That does make sense. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but I genuinely think I'm good at my job because I'm credible. I understand what the job is. I think it's too easy for salespeople to just be generalist salespeople, and just and push on all the sales techniques you've learned, rather than I actually know what I'm talking about here. This is the knowledge behind it. This is the credibleness. And again, I think I've used the
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think people see through you if you're just if you're not there for them. So if you just say, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, that'll be fine. And then it doesn't work out, or you disappear because you don't want to give that bad news or whatever, then, you won't get a second invite into their office.
I mean, you mentioned then about adding value. What else can, especially from your BDM background and kind of teaching BDMs and that kind of thing, what more can they do with brokers to kind of add value rather than just be a criteria dropper? What is it that makes a BDM so successful?
Well, I think it's definitely being there for the bad times, not just the good times. So it's also being available. The amount of people that said to me, "Oh, we always know that you pick up the phone," and I'm like, "Really? Surely that's what you do." But they're saying the amount of people
20% of BDMs.
Don't answer their call. So, if you're not making yourself available to them, then why should they, bother making themselves available to you? So it's a two-way street in that. And I think that goes with, so that's one thing. Pick up the phone, always be there, be available for them. And it's not just, like you say, about criteria. It's all about the other bits of the business that they don't know. So, for example, how can you help with technology? How can you help with marketing? How can you help to grow their business? So, for example, sometimes you can make suggestions about service, how we can improve service, knowledge, criteria, and not just about your own company, but about the wider market as well. So I think sometimes, and I know there's two schools of thought on this, but if someone says, got a deal, can you do it? You can either say no, or you could say, well, no, we can't do it, but I know so-and-so that might, or have you tried this company or whatever. And I think brokers really like that as well. One, it shows you've got knowledge of the market and you know who your competitors are. But two, I think it comes round anyway because they'll appreciate the honesty.
Trust element, isn't it? The trust element of, all of the BDMs who have been in it for a long time say similar things in regards to, if you can't help, you can show them where they can go, and they will 100% come back. They remember that, don't they? They probably remember that more than if you can do a deal for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it is about trust and honesty as well, because if something's not going right, if you can tell them why or explain it or help, that they much appreciate that, and everyone will say, won't they, a quick no is better than a sort of maybe, and then a no further down the line. Yeah.
Good. So we covered obviously the BDM side of things. Let's delve into the more tricky stuff that we did say we were going to talk about. You've been in financial services for a long time, and as a female, you have seen massive changes. And again, I know we've had this conversation, and I was slightly uncomfortable about talking about it because I'm a 40-year-old white straight bloke talking about diversity. But number one, is it really changing? And do we still need to be having those conversations in regards to getting more women in financial services, or even the not being equal when it comes to salaries and promotions and that kind of thing? Do you think it's still a poignant point?
Yeah, I mean, we have mentioned about this, have we? And, is the conversation fatigued, and, do we still need to have it? But just the fact that you feel uncomfortable means we still need to have it. We need to get to a point where,
from a privileged point of view, though, as opposed to like I don't want to have the conversation. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's
but it's all about
people moan about being poor.
No, but it's about equity and equality, isn't it? And it's about everybody feeling included. And we don't want to get to the point where 40-year-old white men are starting to feel excluded because all the emphasis is on women and diversity and gender and everything else.
If we
no.
say
no, but I mean, going back to your one point, has it changed? I mean, it's massively changed since I joined the industry. So I originally left my first role because I'd applied for a management trainee position there, and they said, why bother? You'll be married with kids by the time you're, in a few years or whatever.
That's nuts now, isn't it? I suppose that's how it's changed.
Oh, absolutely. When I took my first job in the city, women weren't allowed to wear trousers, which again, you just can't even imagine that was a thing. So there's been huge strides forward. I mean, I suppose in the early days, it was difficult in some ways, but I suppose perhaps it's just me. I just didn't let it bother me. So I'd go, to meetings. I'd be the only female around the table. I'd go to lots of sporting events, which, was just me and a load of other men. And, it was just something that I did, and I didn't really think too much about it, apart from when I started watching Top Gear every week, just so that I could join in the conversation the next day, because if I hadn't watched it, I would have been definitely excluded. So I think you just have to have a bit of a tough exterior and you just get on with it. And I suppose not until people started talking about it that you actually thought, oh, it was a problem.
Do you know, I was going to say that. Did you not even notice until it was brought up? Because you've always been, because I understand if you can't get into the industry.
I noticed it.
Strong women who have been in the industry who are like, I don't really want to talk about it because I'm a great CEO, I'm a great MD, I'm a great BDM. I'm not a great female CEO, I'm not a great female MD. So that, I think if you've been in it a long time, you didn't, or you just didn't acknowledge it. It was just like you had to work hard, and that was it. I don't know if it's, I don't know how you feel about it.
I did know about it, but I just sort of accepted it as the norm. I didn't really think that it was going to be any different, or I just thought that's how it is. Finance is a male-dominated industry. I've chosen to come into it, so I have to accept it's male-dominated. I didn't really think. I just thought that's the way it is. I mean, I had one role where earlier on in my career, and they'd sold the business to a different owner, and the new owners came in, and I got called into the office. I was 25. I had about 35 staff under me, ran the whole ops area. Then there was two other heads of one. Marketing had one staff, and then there was a customer services manager who had about 6 staff. And I got called into the office, and they said that they were going to increase my salary and give me a company car and give me some other benefits so that I was more in line with the other two. And that's the first time. The other two were men, and I hadn't even, do you know what I mean? Didn't even realise that perhaps they had all these benefits and I didn't. So that was my first experience of the gender gap, and I didn't. And they gave me a very generous pay rise, but they said they couldn't do any more than that because it would have been too out of line. Just to bring me in line. And like I say, they didn't bring me in line with them, but they got me a lot closer because that's all they could do. I think you just thought that as a woman, you just had to work a bit harder, and you had to be, you had to be better, because it was tougher. But either you decided
as well, right?
And or you didn't.
We do have a younger audience, and obviously females looking to get into the financial services. But you've done the things that they said you couldn't do at the beginning, didn't you? You've had a family, you've had a career, you still worked, you had your family and you worked in the city. There's no, you don't have to be one or the other, right? Have you ever felt like that's kind of held you back?
I think what's different now is that when I had mine, I didn't talk about it. They were sort of like, they were the best behaved children in the car, because they knew that if mum was on the phone, they had to stay as quiet as mice, because it was almost like you did have children, but you had to hide that fact from your professional life, because you would, and I remember once when I was pregnant and I was in a packager's office, and I was, it was almost going to be like my last visit before I went on maternity leave, which in those days I had like 12 weeks. That was it. Something else that's changed for the better. And they were just, someone came up to me and he was just so sorry that I was going, and just really, like wished me all the best and everything, but it'd be sad that I wasn't coming. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not coming back? I'll be back after. And he went, no, but you've got to be a mum and all that sort of stuff. And I think it was, there was an attitude about working women in some ways. So it was almost like you just got on with it. And I think with your peers and your colleagues, again, you didn't want to be treated any differently. Mm-hmm. So you didn't want to be treated any differently. So it was almost like if you had to say, oh, the kids are ill, or I need some time off for this, that you might have been selected against. So you didn't. And, I always had, like childminders and, things. I didn't have any family living close to me. So my parents were in Cardiff. I was now up nearer London. My in-laws lived about an hour away. So, I mean, they were good. Like if the kids were sick, I could drop them off at theirs, or they would come up, but they weren't close enough to say, oh, I'm stuck on the M25. Can you go and pick them up from school? Right. So you sort of work your network of people that you can rely on. And it was tough, but you never, ever could say, I need time off for this, or I need time off for that, because you just think, oh, your colleagues will be going, oh, why is she getting preferential treatment because she's got children? So that's definitely something that's changed for the better, in as much as, you see it all over social media, people celebrating their children and their family, and it's their why. And that's really good. And I still feel a little bit uncomfortable about that personal side of things, because I suppose it's been ingrained to me that. I
was going to say, is that just because you were it was just entrenched in you to never really bring it up, because blokes didn't bring it up, and you were
absolutely, yeah. You just work was work and home life was home life, and never the two shall cross.
Now, when you look at the talent we're bringing into the industry, because of the little bit of flexibility that you can give for kids, or even bloody sports days. Like it's little things that we take for granted now. Of course, you can have your sports day.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's so much better, because if you've got a happier workforce and you're more flexible, then you build more loyalty. Everybody gets on with it, and I think building loyalty, and if you need somebody to do that bit extra, if you're more flexible with them, then they'll be more flexible with you. And let's face it, if somebody's not doing their role, then that's a different conversation, isn't it? And that goes in a different direction. But
I think, I genuinely think, again, if we like our office, we are all ridiculously busy at the moment. We're all working lots of hours, but everyone still gets to do the things they need to do with their children. But you're right. I think it builds so much loyalty that, of course, you're going to do an extra few hours when the kids go to bed, or of course, you're going to speak to people in the evenings. You have had that nice, you've had the benefit, of being able to do stuff with the kids when you needed to, or working from home with the kids, and that kind of thing. So I bet I don't want to make it sound commercially sounding, but I bet I get more hours out of people because of giving away a little bit more than you do if you go, well, look, this is your 9 to 5:30, so this is when you work, because there's no way someone would work outside of that, would there? If you didn't have that little bit of leeway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I totally agree. Yeah.
I think it's interesting as well. It's productivity as well, right? I genuinely think people are more. That's not me saying it. This is a fact. But people are more productive when they're happy. They're happy when their home life is working. So it's without wanting to put a commercial pound on it, but being nice. Being nice does actually make you more money. It doesn't. It's better for the business.
I know. I was thinking about obviously today and what we're going to talk about, and I thought the one the worst piece of advice I've ever read or had was that you're paid to be effective and not to be liked. And, when I first started into sort of management, I thought, that is true, isn't it? It doesn't matter if people don't like you, you're not there to be liked. But, oh gosh, I think I learned a long way that life is so much easier if you get on with people. And that was such the wrong, it's true, you are paid to be effective, but life for everybody is so much nicer if you can get on and have better relationships with people.
I also think there is a correlation between being effective and being nice. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. Do you know what I mean? I think people want to work for you because you're nice. People don't want to work as hard for you if they don't like you. I just think, not paid to be liked, paid to be effective is a tough one, because I know people that say that, and some of them are really open to me, going, "Look, people don't warm to me, but I don't care because I'm efficient, or I lead by example or whatever it is." But it's nice to come in and feel liked as well. It's nice that you want to, be friends with your peers. I don't know if that's
you spend a lot of time with people. Yeah, you spend a lot of time with people that you work with, don't you? So, sometimes you spend more time at work or with work people than you do with your family. So if there isn't a sort of mutual respect, let's call it that rather than friendship, but, it's not going to be so much fun, is it?
Yeah. I mean, I have an inherent need to be liked as well. This is a much deeper conversation about, I hate people who don't like me. I don't, and that's always been part of my psyche, because I wouldn't understand why we're not friends. But it's difficult in business, because at the same time, people you have to have that kind of mutual respect and that kind of thing as well. But it's it seems strange that you'd be comfortable not to be liked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they do say as well that when people leave a company, they're actually leaving their manager, not necessarily the company.
Do you know what? I never really bought into that until I got deeper into other people's businesses. And because you only ever see your own business, but it's so true. I've got people that work here who worked for great businesses with crap managers. And I think how the managers were so different from the great directors as well, just bad middle management. And I think they would never even consider moving if the managers were a direct reflection of the directors, who were great. So, so I've seen it firsthand. And the more businesses you go into, the more you see it. It's so true. Great leaders, people don't leave great leaders. They're just, they want to go and work for them, don't they?
Yeah. Although in defence of some managers, I would say that you tend to get promoted because you're really good at what you do.
Doesn't mean you're a good manager.
You get promoted. Yeah, you get promoted to be a manager and managing people, and in a lot of the cases, you don't actually get the training and the help to support you becoming a good manager. They just assume that, let's take an underwriter, you're a great underwriter, you become underwriting manager. They just assume you're going to be a good manager, but nobody's actually taught you that, and it's a completely different skill set. So, and then sometimes it can be quite hard between, that middle management can be quite hard to work out, who to please, upwards or downwards, or how you do it. And then again, I suppose it depends on, how much, how much authority you're given, or, to sort of do the role. So it is a really tough role to be in. And if you haven't been given support and guidance, you can see why some people sort of fall over, and some people do say, I just want to go back to underwriting or go back to my previous role, because they were really good at that. Yeah,
I'd like to think that that's changing, that we're not just promoting like top salespeople into manager jobs, because I genuinely think management is a calling, right? Especially middle management is a calling, because you tend to not earn as much as your sales guys in the end, or you don't, you're not on those big targets and that kind of thing. You're having to appease people so much more, and be kind of, things like empathy that aren't taught in sales as much. So it's such a different skill set, isn't it? So I know what you mean, and it's always been that the best people, especially like in recruitment, same as mortgages, the best people become the manager, or the highest performing. But it's such a different trait, isn't it? Because sales is a little bit selfish, which isn't a great trait for a manager.
Yeah. Or people don't appreciate that there's perhaps other avenues they can go into. They might think that, if I want to get on, then I literally have to go through the sort of, leadership management route. Whereas, there are other things to do to progress in your role and in your company.
Do you think that is more, the word wrong, prevalent now, in that it used to be salesperson, manager. Now there is a kind of a roadmap of if you don't want to be a manager, because I think people are more acutely aware of the fact that not all great salespeople are great managers, or not all great, whatever it is, are great managers. Do you think that's changed quite a lot?
Yeah, I think personal development and people's journeys are sort of mapped out a bit more now, aren't they? It's something, if you get on your appraisals, it's always something that's included now that perhaps it wasn't so much, where you talk about where you want to go and how you can get there. And I think companies as well realise that if you've got good people, then you want to keep them within the business, and getting people and retaining talent is just as important as who your managers are and everything else. So yeah, definitely.
Talent is the most important thing. I'm always going to be biased because I'm in recruitment, but your people are literally the most important.
Yeah.
I don't think many people would disagree that it's and like you said, the retaining people, it's retaining top talent. It's like I think I saw a thing on Stephen Bartlett said the other day. It was along the lines of, we are all just in recruitment, trying to persuade the best people to come and work with you, and then trying to keep them happy. Which is true, especially as business owners or managers. That's the toughest gig, is getting people to come and buy into what you're doing, and then getting them to stay.
Absolutely, and when I did a project into why people leave, there was two things that came out of it. The top one was that they've either been oversold something and at their interview and it hasn't delivered, or they haven't had the training to support their role. And it's just so important and those things are just so fundamental, aren't they? And it sounds obvious that don't oversell a role, say it how it is. And maybe people are so keen and eager to get those people on board that perhaps they get a bit over enthusiastic about it. But then secondly, if you put somebody into a role, even if you've done the job before, you've got to learn the new company culture. You've got to learn the way things do that. And, processes are different, systems are different, and you need to provide people with the tools to be able to do their job.
Do you know what? The overselling thing is the number one bugbear for me, because that's the number one reason people come to us. I suppose if people didn't oversell, well, I wouldn't make any money. But at the same time, it is the worst thing you can do. I also appreciate if you're looking at job adverts, for instance, they're all very similar, or you're looking at BDM roles, for instance, they're all much of a muchness. So if you can promise a little bit more, but you 100% won't keep that person. I don't think people understand the cost of hiring people on overselling. It must cost the industry more than anything, any other problem, because the cost of rehiring, cost of training, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you've also got to think about succession planning and all those other things as well. And it's just, to turn it into business, it's about repeat customers, isn't it? How many people just deal with one customer and then move on to the next and don't really think about servicing them at the back end. Whereas when you think the cost of acquiring a new client as opposed to, keeping an existing one, it's the same model, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what? I wrote about this morning. I was going to say you've been looking at my LinkedIn, but you haven't, because I didn't post it. But I actually, I said about looking at new business. The first thing I do when I look at new business is speak to old business. It's not, you know what I mean? The cost of new business is massive, when actually we've all got a database of people that have bought from us, or people that like us, or have picked up the phone to us. It's massive, isn't that? I think we kind of neglect that. Do you think I know we've all talked about the BDM side of things, but do you think that is a major trait as well? They understand the relationship building over the fun of new business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old 80-20 rule, isn't it? That you'll get 80% of your business from 20% of the people. So when you've got to build those relationships and keep them going and stuff. And I was just going to say that during the credit crunch, when a lot of mortgage lenders disappeared, when products disappeared, and it was a really tough time for everybody. those brokers and people who were successful and kept going were the ones that had an existing client bank that they worked and that had realised that. And I think it became so much more important that people sort of realised it was all about sort of servicing and looking after existing clients and not necessarily just chasing the new ones. And I think that's a lesson, that's a positive lesson that came out of that period as well. And I think people are much more aware of that now.
You think we learned? I always think, like, did we learn anything? Because then the market got better, and then last year was tough, and then we started saying, don't forget, the most important thing is the relationship building, and everyone had to go back to doing it. And then the market's a bit better now, and do we just naturally slide into that, like, because it gets easier? Like, I think it's really important to remember the hard times, because that really sharpens our tools. But in all honesty, like, I already see people slipping back into, like, we've only had 3 months of good business recently, and it's already you know what I mean? It's hard to maintain that standard. I think that's the top echelon of people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mean, this business is very cyclical, isn't it? And yeah, we all learn lessons, and we say we won't go there. But I mean, if you just take COVID, really, we learned a lot of lessons there, and now that feels like it's the distant future. You know, so far in the distance.
Every time we do it,
I speak to people. Yeah, I speak to people that, you know, during you sort of say about the credit crunch, and they go like, I was 4, and it's like, okay, and they don't remember it. And it's the same. Soon we'll be like that, won't we? With COVID, where people go, I don't remember that. My mum told me about it or something. So I think it's just human nature, isn't it? And you know, sometimes. Yeah, you know, it's great if we can learn, you know, and maybe that's where experience, you know, you have the benefit of hindsight and stuff. But yeah, I think we also just roll with the punches and get on with it and try and keep optimistic and keep going and look for the next new thing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's. I have kept you for longer than I said I would, but I say this to everyone because I'm interested. So I am going to keep talking. But what do you think? So if someone new is coming into the industry, what advice would you give, having seen people come in and out of this? I'm sure you've seen people come in, make a few quid and leave quickly. But the guys that have got the real longevity, what would you say those traits are? What do people need to think about when they're joining?
Well, I think, you know, everything's as good as you want to make it, isn't it? If you put the effort in, then you'll get the rewards out of it. I think the main key things really are be authentic. Yeah. So, you know, you've got to be you. And I think you've got to be you just to enjoy it, for people to see who you are. And on the back of that comes consistency. So you've got to be consistent in what you do. The other thing I would say is respect each other. So if you can respect each other, the industry, who you work with, then you'll have a much better time. And if you're lucky enough to work in a great team, then, you know, it's such a great industry. Somebody asked me this morning, actually, why have I been in the industry for so long? And I think it just draws you in, isn't it? It draws you in, and once you're in it, you find it hard to leave. But also, there's just so many different roles and so many different things. If you take the average company, you've got salespeople, you've got underwriters, you've got IT people, you've got marketing people, your HR people. There's so many different roles that you can do within the industry that you're bound to find something that you enjoy. So you might come into the industry and find yourself in a role, you know, like me, you might go into credit underwriting and then you might switch to, you know, sales. I've seen lots of people try the sales, end up in customer services. So, yeah, it's really diverse, interesting industry. And like I said, you know, you get out of it what you put in.
Good. And I was going to make them the last question, but I have got more. Because we have touched on this as well. We've spoken, and I do think it's important. These will be snippets. I wanted to talk to you about mentorship because I know we've talked about it before. I had said this before, didn't I? I try and get every conversation that I've ever had with someone in, and it's really tough. But I want to talk about mentorship because you have been in the game a long time, and I know you are happy to mentor people, and there are great mentors in the industry. But I genuinely feel they're not utilised enough. So talk to me about that. I mean, about the importance of having people to to look up to, and then sharing your knowledge and passing that on? How important is that for you and us as an industry?
Well, there's two things. Yeah, there's two things really, isn't it? One, it's having a mentor, and also having a sponsor. And it's, the mentor is somebody that you can speak to. Perhaps they're, somebody that you can talk to about anything that's going on at the moment, where you can get some advice about how to tackle it from a different, a different side of things. Yeah. Sponsorship is about having somebody in the room that's going to speak up for you when you're not there. And I think both those things are just really, really important, because, I think everyone goes the same, whatever part of the business you have the same frustrations, you have the same problems, hurdles, things that come up, or even just, how do I get my ideas heard? How can I resolve this conflict? How would I go about that? Or have you come across this instance? It's really good to have somebody to be able to sort of bounce those ideas off. And, I do some work with the Working in Mortgages, and they have a free, mentor-mentee scheme, which anybody can sign up to. And you just go on there. You can scroll through all the mentors. There's some fantastic people in the industry
nuts
on
that isn't jam-packed full of people trying to absolutely just get your brain dumped from you. I cannot believe that it doesn't get used enough.
Yeah, I mean that's a free resource that's there, and I think whether you want to meet up with somebody, you can do it virtually, or you can do you can choose somebody who lives close to you and have face to face. But I think why wouldn't you? Because I think the thing about being a good leader, or all the things we've talked about, it's all about learning and education, isn't it? And if you can learn off some of the best in the business, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? But I think you can always take something away from somebody. You can never stop learning. I love a TED talk, and, reading and trying to do things better. You're always striving to do something better and to improve upon everything. And having somebody you can bounce those ideas off, somebody who's not necessarily going to tell you what to do, but they're going to put that thought-provoking questions into your mind. And I do think sometimes that all these issues that you might have, you probably know the answer. You just perhaps can't see it, or maybe need a little bit direction to get there. And if you can have somebody to help you do that, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Yeah.
I love that. I think it's the same as when you go and see a business coach or anything like that. You already know, and you talk about it so much that you give the answer, and then you go, oh, well done. You paid someone for that. Just by talking through your problem, but actually the mentorship you get from that is free. Just talking about your problems. I think it's incredible that. I think it's incredible that people do it. But I also think that's another trait of great leaders as well. Like, they want to share, don't they? You want to learn off great leaders. There is so many.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all about the team, isn't it? Like, being a great leader is about inspiring and leading. It's if you've got a great team, then you've done something right, haven't you? If you haven't got a great team, it's not their fault, it's probably yours.
Absolutely.
So, it's all about the team.
Yeah, I feel like if I ever make a bad hire or do anything wrong, that's on me, right? That's a failure on me, because I've not seen it. Ironic, isn't it? I build other people's businesses, but you never concentrate as much on your own as do other people's do. That's really. I'm not going to keep saying last question. But the sponsorship side of things, talk to me about that, because obviously we always talk about mentorship on here, about going to see people like they're working in mortgages and that kind of thing. What do you mean by sponsorship? As to, like, do you go and ask someone outright, like an AA type thing, where someone is just looking after you, or do you naturally become someone's sponsor in a business where you're just looking out for them?
Well, it can be both, but I think sometimes you do have to be brave and ask somebody. Ask them to be your mentor, or ask them to be your sponsor. And those people that you gravitate to in work that, perhaps give you praise or talk about you or tell you that you're the next best thing, or, and then you just have that conversation with them. So, if they're in a meeting higher up and they'll, showcase perhaps something that you've done or put a good word in for you, then that will really help you leverage your potential.
Nice. Amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And all great advice. I genuinely hope people listen in and really get that. If nothing else, understand that there are people out there that really want to help you grow in this industry. I think it's so important. And I genuinely think sometimes people think they're on their own, and they're not. There's loads of help. So in regards to Streambank,
and the hardest. Yeah, no. Well, the hardest thing, isn't it, is asking for it, isn't it? Or just being afraid to make that first step, but don't, because we've all been there, and nobody would have signed up for it if they didn't genuinely want to help people. So do it. Yeah.
I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world, because I don't have to ask people to be mentors. I just force it upon them, because I talk about business all day. That's my job. I speak to great leaders every day, so I've got the wonderful job of just listening. So I've got 1,000 mentors, just no one knows they don't know they're my mentors. It's the perfect situation.
Well, sometimes it is like that. I mean, I've got a handful of people that over the years, we've sat down, chewed the cud, and talked about business and stuff. And it's only when you're actually asked to define it that you know who's your mentor, that you think, oh, those people have always been a constant. They've always been there. I know that I can always turn to people. And you have that sort of inner circle. And maybe they don't wear the hat that says mentor on them, but that's what they're doing.
Who was yours, Roz? Who are your mentors?
So a couple of people that aren't necessarily in the industry anymore, but like Kelvin Cooper, who used to run Solar Mortgages, he's been there. He's somebody that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but has got so much experience in so many different areas. He's been a great one. And then people like Roger, I don't want to say it because Roger gets
can't say Roger, he's already been said 8 times.
Adoration, isn't he? He gets too much adoration. But yeah, that's
Oh, good.
That's a couple of names, and some others that I won't say. But
no, that's what I think. If anyone asks me, I go, "Oh, I'm told them, so I can't really tell you." That is very amazingly useful. Thank you very much. So, if anyone wants to contact you or Streambank, how's the best way to do it? What's the best way to get hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so my contact details are on LinkedIn. So always happy to do that. On the Streambank website as well, my contact details are on there. So yeah, pretty easy to get in touch with me. Amazing. And on the Working in Mortgages website as well.
Of course, for the mentorship. Genuinely, people have a look at that. I will post that on the socials as well, because it's important. I've posted it before, but we'll definitely get up there. And for anyone watching and listening as well, all of Roz's socials will be on all of our marketing material, so you can get hold of that or have any conversations, whether that is mentorship or actually the job that you do, which is bridging. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you everyone for listening. But thank you very much, Roz, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks, Marcus. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, bye bye.